I always find it a bit challenging to tell my story of the call, mainly because there's not one single moment where it was clear to me God says, Tom, I want you to be a priest. Said something came gradual in my life. I was living and working as a police officer in my mid-20s, not really living out my faith, but then came an invitation first to be a godfather. My friend invited me to sponsor his child in baptism. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't practicing my faith. I tried to convince him to move on, but he said, Tom, we want you. I had to go get confirmed. They waited for me to do that. I said, well, if I'm going to get confirmed, I should go back to church. If I'm going to go back to church, I should go back to confession. And that's where it all sort of began. I started living this sacramental life. I realized how much about my faith I didn't know. So I started reading children's books and things like that on the sly, just to learn more and more about God and what the church professes to be true. And as I grew in that prayer life and that conversation with God, then I began to hear that other invitation. Tom, I want you to be my priest. I started to hear priests ask me in confession if I had considered it. People at daily mass. They invited me to be part of the core team and youth ministry. I really just got active in my faith. And by allowing that time for me to be quiet before God, that's when I really heard him inviting me to take the next steps, to reach out to the vocation director, to go to seminary, to quit my job and move away, sort of on a leap of faith, to see, okay, God, what do you want? You may want me to be a priest, but at that point, to be honest, I didn't. It wasn't until about 5 years in the seminary in my pastoral year, which is close as seminarians get to living the life of a parish priest, was in that moment when I saw how the people of the parish loved their pastor and how he loved them. And he enjoyed this life that, although extremely busy, was very fulfilling and it was very fruitful. And I left that year knowing not only does God want me to be a priest, but I want to be a priest. That went all the way up to my ordination day, which was one of the greatest days of my life. In many ways, it was the end of a long process, but in other ways, it was just the beginning. Here I am 10 and a half years later, fulfilled in my priesthood, challenged in my priesthood, growing as a person in love of God and certainly love of neighbor. I'm grateful that I allowed God that time to get through my thick skull and my hardened heart so that I could hear the call and then to answer it with great generosity.